So now I'll go over some examples. First, I want to talk about comments. This is a comment. Any line of code that starts with this number sign will be treated as a comment. So what I write here won't be used when I run the program, or when the program runs. So Python will just ignore all of these lines as they're just comments. They're just meant to add some context to what the file is actually doing. So now I'll show you, this is how to ask for text input. So I'll say first name equals input, what is your name? And then this is how to ask for a number. You can say x, for example, equals float input, enter the value for x. And so this is going to take user input from, it's going to basically ask the user, what is your name? And then whatever the user types in afterwards, it will store in this variable called first name. And here the same kind of thing is happening, except it will ask enter the value for x, and then it will make sure that that value is stored as a decimal number, which in Python is called a float, and it will store that result in x. So if I run the program here, you'll see it will ask for this, and it will ask for this, and then the program will end. So I'll run it, it says, what is your name? Okay, I'll just put in some name, John, and the value for x, 5.4. And the program ends. But now we can use these values if we'd like. So for example, I'll use x here, and I'll make some calculation and store that in a variable called y. So I'll do y equals x squared, or x to the exponent 2, plus 5 times x minus 7. And so we're using x here to calculate y. And then I can output the answer rounded to 2 decimal places. So I'll do the print statement like this, and I'll say the answer is, and then add comma, space, and then I'll use the round function, and I'll put y here, so we round y, and then I'll put comma, space, and 2, so that it rounds to 2 decimal places. Okay, so if I run this now, see it'll ask what's your name. I'll put John, value for x, 5.4, and it calculates y here, and then it prints out to us the answer is 49.16, so it rounded to 2 decimal places. So another example, I'll just ask for x again, so float input, enter the value of x once again, and this time we'll do y equals x to the exponent 0.5, or the square root of x. And then now I'll show you output the answer rounded to the nearest whole number. We'll say print the answer is just write it like this. The answer is, and then we'll do that round function again, but this time we just add y. We don't need to specify that we want 2 decimal places because we want no decimal places. We want a whole number. And so I'll run this again, and we'll go through the first steps that we already did. You see there it says 49.16. And now we're calculating the square root, and so I'll put down, I don't know, 16, and you see it just gives us 4. If I run that again, and this time I'll do something that should have decimal places. like 17, it still gives us 4 because it rounds down to the nearest whole number. And then lastly, I'll just show you outputting a thank you message with the user's name. And we'll say print thank you, and a comma, first name. And if I run this one last time, say what is your name? John 5.4, 16, and then it says at the end, thank you, John. Okay, so that's the first example. Now if you want to save this as a separate file, the easiest way to do that would be just over here where it says main.py. You can just right click or click the little three dots here and click duplicate, and then you can name the file whatever you'd like. So I'm just going to name it example1. But any Python code that you want to run using this run button needs to be in main.py. So we're going to keep using main.py. Okay. The next example, this code will ask for a number and will divide 100 by that number. So we'll say A equals 100, and we'll say B equals int input enter the number. So an important difference here is here we use the int function. You can see right here we use int. Before, in example 1, we used float. So the difference is int forces the user to input a whole number. Float will allow the user to input a decimal number, but int only accepts whole numbers. And then we'll say, okay, so division by 0 is not possible. So the code will print an error message and allow the user to try again. So what we'll do is we'll check and we'll say if b is equal to 0, notice here we use two equal signs for comparison. Say if b is equal to 0, print invalid number. We can't divide by 0. And then we'll give the user one more chance here to set b again. So we'll say int input enter the valid number. And then down here we'll just say div equals a divided by b. And we can print out the division of a by b is div. So now if I run this code, at the bottom here you'll see it says enter a number. And I'll type in 20, and you'll see the division of 100 by 20 is 5. And if I run this again, but this time I type 0, you'll see it says invalid number. We can't divide by 0. So it asks us one more time to enter a valid number, and I'll type 20 this time, and it gives us the answer. The division of 100 by 20 is 5. So that's example 2. So I'll just go ahead and duplicate this file to save example 2. And I'll delete this here. And you can clear the console by using this little trash icon here. So I'll clear the console as well. And we'll start with example 3. So first I'll import math because we'll be using some math functions. And I'll say, okay, so r equals, or the radius equals float input enter the radius. And then we'll calculate the circumference. That's 2 times math.py times r. say a equals math.pi times r squared. It's the area. And then we can print circumference is c, and we can print area is a. And if I run this, see, it asks us to enter the radius, and I'll put 4.8, and you see the circumference and the area, but they're very long numbers with a bunch of decimal places. So I'll just go ahead and show again how to round, so we can round this so that the numbers appear a little bit nicer. So I'll print circumference, and this time I'll use the round function, and so we'll round c like this. It'll round to the nearest whole number. And for the area, we'll use the round function again, but this time we'll round a with 2 decimal places. So you add the comma, the space, and the 2. And this will round a to 2 decimal places. So if I run this program again, and I type 4.8, we'll see the first two are the circumference and area with all the decimal places, and then we see circumference rounded to the nearest whole number, which is 30, and we see area rounded to have 2 decimal places, so it becomes 72.38.